With you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to the crowds, "This is how it is with the kingdom of God. It is as if a man were to scatter seed on the land, and would sleep and rise night and day, and through it all the seed would sprout and grow. He knows not how. Of its own accord the land yields fruit, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. And when the grain is ripe, he wields the sickle at once, for the harvest has come." He said, "To what shall we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable can we use for it? It is like a mustard seed that, when it is sown in the ground, it is the smallest of all the seeds on the earth. But once it is sown, it springs up and becomes the largest of plants and puts forth large branches, so that the birds of the sky can dwell in its shade." With many such parables, he spoke the word to them, and they were able to understand it. Without parables he did not speak to them, but to his own disciples he explained everything in private. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Most of us as Americans have an attitude of wanting everything immediately. And I suppose I would make a terrible farmer. Even now, when I look at plants that have just been placed, for instance, in front of the church or in my own yard of the rectory, I want instant growth. I'm very impatient. I think it's the type of people that we are. We're used to getting everything in the supermarket. It's all prepared for us, whether it be vegetables or freshly cut flowers. But as you and I know, many of you here perhaps grew up near a farm or have some people that you know, maybe parents or grandparents who are farmers in this area. Farmers have to be very patient. Farmers have to also recognize that they really don't have any control over the weather. They have to wait for rain and for those gentle and soft breezes that announce the springtime. They have to spend a lot of time with, as Pearl Buck would say, the good earth. In other words, they have to depend on nature. The gospel reading in today's liturgy talks about two parables that farmers would certainly understand, but which would drive people like me nuts, I suppose. I had a good friend of mine, Sister Mary Ann Laughlin, who used to run the retreat house that I helped found in Manchester. One of her favorite terms was this: let things unfold. Let things unfold. It only can come from maturity. When we're young or impatient, we don't like to let things unfold. We like to unfold them. But as we get more mature, older perhaps, we begin to understand that we can't control things, events, and even people. In our culture, unfortunately, sometimes we try to make 6-year-olds into 12-year-olds. Or we try to push 12-year-olds into becoming 18-year-olds. We don't let kids be kids anymore. Sometimes we do the same thing with relationships. How often do we hear people say after a few months, and I've heard this said more than once, they don't want to be married because it's not what they thought it would be. Well, you and I know that marriage, friendships, relationships take a lot of hard work to cultivate, to make happen. So the mustard seed today, which is so insignificant, Mark tells us in today's gospel, it's the smallest of all seeds, and yet with time it can become a big plant, 8 to 10 feet, large enough to shelter the birds of the sky. So we're called today to really look at that in our own lives and to ask the question, am I being patient? Not only with others, but even with myself when it comes to my spiritual growth. We can be very impatient with others when it comes to progress in life. We can be upset with our homes and with our businesses unless we take time to reflect on what this gospel means. And yet you and I know that growth can be very subtle. When we look at our own kids, they grow before our eyes, but sometimes it's subtle. We've got to be respectful of where they are. Pope Francis in The Joy of the Gospel, it's number 172, writes this, I love it. He says, one who accompanies others has to realize that each person's situation before God and their life in grace are mysteries which no one can fully know from without. Repeat that. One who accompanies others has to realize that each person's situation before God and their life in grace are mysteries which no one can fully know from without. The gospel tells us, yes, that we're to correct others and to help them grow, but not to force it. To make sure that we treat people with respect. Someone good at such accompaniment does not give in to frustration or fears, the Holy Father says. He or she invites others to let themselves be healed, to take up their mat, embrace the cross, leave all behind, and go forth ever anew to proclaim the gospel. So in other words, what Jesus does, and we see that constantly in the gospel, he doesn't force people to change. He invites. Whether it be Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who one day climbs that tree because he was short of stature, but he wanted to see Jesus, so he climbs the tree, and Jesus notices him. Jesus is always so perceptive. Zacchaeus, come down. I want to have a meal with you. He didn't say, come down, I want to give you a pet because you're collecting taxes. Come down, Zacchaeus. I want to have a meal with you. I want to befriend you. A woman at the well, who had been married so many times. Again, Jesus meets her at the place where she's comfortable, the well where she's drawing water. By the end of their conversation, she says, I've met someone, at first she thinks he's simply a nice man and later a prophet, but then she realizes she's met Jesus, the Messiah, and she's transformed. Jesus wants to do that with us, slowly, gradually, lovingly. And that's today's parables. Remind us that we have a God who's always there for us. He'll wait for us as long as it takes. And when we allow him to change us, we'll become that new creation. But don't rush. Don't force things to happen. In other words, as Sister Marianne used to always say to her retreatants and reminding me of so often, let things unfold. If you let things unfold, instead of rushing kids or relationships or situations too quickly, you can allow them to take shape Not in your time, but ultimately in God's time.